Hello and welcome to another show. We have a guest today that, unlike most of our guests, Mike has never actually worked with.
Son of a gun.
But they're not enemies, so that's a good thing.
Not yet.
We'll see how the interview goes. Okay, Mike, you want to introduce your buddy? Oh, no, he's doing the puppet thing again.
Uh-oh.
Hello, I will speak for Mike today. This is my good friend, Jerry Bingham. I don't know, actually, if we ever met Jerry. I think we did at some con.
It's possible.
Somewhere. But Jerry's famous for his comic book art. He did Son of the Demon.
Yeah.
Did Archie Goodwin write, or excuse me, Denny O'Neil write that?
No, that was Mike W. Barr.
Mike W. Barr. But Jerry's done a lot of art for both Marvel and DC. Tell us what the titles were that you illustrated.
Well, I started out at Marvel. Archie Goodwin was editor-in-chief there. He gave me my first tryout jobs. And then I got picked up on, Jack Kirby left the building and they put me on Black Panther. Probably to get back at Jack Kirby because I was brand new at the time and my artwork was pretty raw. But Black Panther, and then I bounced around a lot. They bounced me from onto Iron Man, and then I did a lot of Spider-Man titles over the years, and Marvel team-ups and Marvel 2-in-1s. And finally I ran away and went over to DC and started doing did a lot of stuff over there. I did the Alien Nation film adaptation.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was actually called Outer Heat when I first walked into the studios there, but then they changed it while it was in the works. And then I went on to do a lot of Batman covers and a lot of covers, Suicide Squad, and then I did the Batman graphic novel, Son of the Demon. And I did In Darkest Night. That was what if Bruce Wayne had discovered the Green Lantern ring. And then, eventually left and made my way to Hollywood. So,
when did you move to California?
It was mid-'80s. And I was still working on, I was just starting Son of the Demon graphic novel when I moved out there. And so that's where I did a lot of my DC work and simultaneously looking for work in Hollywood. So,
is that why you moved out there?
Yeah. I've told other people that when I started working professionally in comics, I anticipated the end of my tenure, and because I had seen all the great illustrators who came before me being kicked to the curb. Everybody, George Tuska, Herb Trimp, all these guys started getting less and less work over the years. And I realized early on that it was a short lifespan for most illustrators in comics, at least for the big two, which back then the big two was really the whole ball game. When I went, I did do a little bit of stuff for Malibu Comics when I went out to the West Coast, but I went with the intention of altering my career and getting film work just to replace what I was losing back east.
Did you ever flirt with doing any movie posters or anything?
I did a lot of film work. I actually, when I got out there, I went to UCLA and studied production design. That was my ultimate goal, be a production designer, so I could basically take over the look of any film. But that didn't work out. Unions being what they are and such. And so I started out with Wes Craven, gave me my first job. Worked on his New Nightmare, where I redesigned Freddy Krueger and a lot of props and stuff. And he liked it so much, he brought me on to his next film, Vampire in Brooklyn. And I designed all the vampire transitions, and I designed a sword cane and a coffin and all these props and everything. And then apparently the union artist there got angry at him, and I eventually got let go, and just went on from there. Got a lot of work in doing storyboards. And, it's the obvious crossover from comics for me. And so I spent 25, almost 30 years in Hollywood, just bouncing from one job to the next.
Do you know Brian Murray?
No, I do not.
An old friend of mine. He did some comics with me, but now he does storyboarding mostly.
Okay.
But I thought all you storyboarders knew one another.
No, I worked for home mostly. Well, actually, because I was never allowed in the union, like I said, I would get onto a project while it was still in the development phase. And so as soon as they got picked up as soon as the production company got picked up by a studio, or they had to hire all union, then they wound up letting me go, and then I bounced to the next one. So I got a lot of work from special effects and titles companies because they weren't union houses, and particularly U&Co, very famous titles company, and they do special effects. They do all kinds of stuff, and I worked for them for 8 to 10 years. Got a lot of work from them, but I was never on one. Well, I don't say never. I spent some time on the road. I worked on some films that were not union when I started there. The Double with Richard Gere movie was out in Detroit, so I spent a couple months out in Detroit on that. And the big one was Nomad, where historical epic that was shot in Kazakhstan, and I flew to Kazakhstan for that. Stayed out there for most of the winter. Well, I got there, it was 117 degrees, and it was -10 when I was in the middle of things out there. But that was quite the experience. Got need a whole nother chapter. Yeah.
What was the movie?
It was called Nomad. If you're familiar with Iron Chef America, he was the villain of the piece, and so it was an international crew. Most were not from the U.S. Ivan Pesur was the American director, but he was from, I believe, Czechoslovakia originally.
What year was that?
Oh gosh, it's almost 20 years ago, I think. My brain is.
Was this the movie that starred Kuno Becker?
Yes, it is. He was the lead. Yeah, and it was two directors. It was Ivan Pesur and the Kazakh director, because it was all financed by the Russian government, and well, Kazakh/Russian government. They were not one government at the time, according to the press. But
do not look this movie up on Rotten Tomatoes.
I don't look anything up on Rotten Tomatoes.
But I'm glad it worked out for you. But it's Kazakhstan supposedly spent $40 million in making this martial arts epic that bought a laughably corny Hollywood B movie, gorgeous scenery, Hollywood B actors and extras who plainly weren't members of the Screen Extras Guild.
Well, actually, most of the actors were Kazakh. They weren't Hollywood actors.
Right.
There were a few, but we had the best stunt coordinator, fight coordinator, Richard Norton.
I'm familiar with him.
He was Jackie Chan's -- go-to. A bad accidental in most of his early movies.
That's right.
And the guy was brilliant to watch on the set. The people he brought in, other fight directors, and it was an epic in every sense of the word. I mean, they at one point, they built cities, and they had this huge Kazakh warrior camp, and in the middle of thing, they had this great Russian horse wrangler, and at one point they stampeded over 100 horses right down the center of all these yurts and all this art direction, and they stopped and they went back and did it again, and they were just, it was really a talented crew, regardless of what people thought about the story or what. But working on that set was really, it was impressive. With even Pesur, one of the big problems was the control of the script, and so even Pesur was always being countermanded by the Kazakh director on the set and in meetings, and basically he's the one with the Russian government backing that they could make their decisions and make the film the way they wanted to see it. And I think the film suffered because of it. But
I see Mark Dacascos was in the cast.
yeah, well, he went on to be the Iron Chef America.
Yeah.
On TV. Yeah, so he was great.
Is that a cooking show?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the I don't even know what you call him, because he's not really the host. He's just guy that
I don't know what he's doing now.
Yeah.
Well, he's a fine martial artist and actor. He's famous for Brotherhood of the Wolf.
Yeah, he's terrific. And he's such a nice guy. I mean, I met him. I was just alone up in a green room at one point, and he came in, and I didn't know who he was. This is before we started shooting, and he just started up a conversation. He told me about himself, and it was a really nice guy. And then seeing him on the set, and he's supposed to ride down through the center of the camp there and get up and jump off the horse, and he rides down the center of the cab, and while the horse is moving, he just slides out of the saddle and lands on his feet, and he's walking, and it's like, it was amazing what this guy could do physically. I was impressed.
Yeah. He seems nice, but he gets cast as a villain a lot.
Well, it's his look, of course.
Yeah. And he has that.
But he is a really nice guy in person, from my experience with him. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, did you have not to totally bring it back to comics, but did you have any other experiences like that where you had kind of like a I say this because I've had it where I've had kind of more than one editor or more than one person and two leaders that are involved, and they just kind of keep I don't know, trying to bash each other or try to get their way done, and it's counterproductive to what you're actually trying to do. I'm not asking for names. I'm just saying.
No. I didn't have any of that with Marvel or DC, because most of that stuff went on between the writers and the editors. So
the editors.
The only time the biggest problem I had was when a couple of things I did over at Malibu Comics, and one of the editors basically turned my job over to somebody else, who basically just tore up my writing, wrote it the way he wanted to, and his artwork just anyhow, I won't name names, but it was a project I wasn't happy with when I walked away from it. Yeah.
So when did you start writing? Did you say you did some writing at Malibu too? Or just art?
Well, I've been writing since high school. English, after art, English was my biggest subject, and I took creative writing classes, and then when I moved out to Hollywood, I was taking aside from the UCLA work, I was taking other classes in creative writing and going to seminars with. I got to actually meet several big name writers while I was out there, and I made friends with Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, some of the biggest names in Hollywood.
Wow.
They started out on Aladdin and moved on to other DreamWorks and Jerry Bruckheimer. They did a lot of Jerry Bruckheimer movies, and these guys are they're still hot commodities there. And so, but I was privileged to meet those guys, and but I was trying my hand at scripts. I was trying novels and everything, and just could never get. I have some long-winded horror stories about some of the people that I've tried to work for, but and I was always trying to write comics too. But anytime I went in with a script back in the early days, the editor generally said nodded, and I was basically an artist trying to be a writer, and there's a stigma attached to that, and
unless you're a big enough artist, and then they'll run it regardless of whether it makes sense or not.
Right. Well, yeah, and they used to be more like that until those image guys came along and changed the planet for them.
Oh, right.
They basically were allowed to dictate to the editors. So anyhow, I don't know much of what went on there, so I don't have any inside baseball on that.
Well, tell us about Hades' Kiss. How long have you been working on that, and how did it become a novel? Because I believe you said that it started out as a series of short stories.
Yeah, well, when I left the West Coast and moved out east here, I've been, like I said, I've been writing all my life, so I was determined to be a writer. And just over the years, I was never able to get that agent and get through the slush piles and all that stuff. And I spent years trying. So when I came out east here, that was my intention. I gave up illustration altogether. I don't even want to be involved in it because it's a bit painful to think, I grew up so in love with the medium and then having a hard time getting work, and said, I don't want to fight for work in this genre. So when I came out east, I decided I'm just going to devote myself to writing. I still do some Western art shows, painting, but so I got here and I said, well, my novels weren't getting any attention. So I basically started writing short stories, and I figured, okay, well, maybe this is a way but I wrote maybe half a dozen short stories. I had 2 different series characters that I was working on. But I went with the one that was that I liked the most because I grew up on Sherlock Holmes. And the first story that I wrote for this character was basically a Holmes pastiche. I just changed the names and changed the setting and but I drop all these hints in the story that kind of Easter eggs that would people might say, oh, that's kind of a little too close to Arthur Conan Doyle, isn't it? So I did that purposely on the first story, and then I decided to do a few more, and I sent them out to magazines and got I didn't get a lot of responses, but the response I did get was, "Oh, sorry, this is not what we're looking for." And eventually, I had maybe 4 short stories on this one character, and I said, "Well, I'm watching YouTube videos all the time, and I'm seeing people doing the self-publishing thing, and I kind of focused on that and figured out how to do it right." And over the past 3 years, well, it took me about 2.5 years. I started writing when I got here, these short stories, and I wrote for about 2.5 years on this stuff. And by the time I was done, I had 6 short stories, 3 novelettes, and 2 novellas with this character. And after halfway through the short story deal, I started working on weaving these stories together and just dropping, because they're still independent stories, I drop little hints to future and past incidents. And it took a lot of going back and rewriting and manipulating the stories so that they might fit better with one another, and put them in some sort of order. I didn't want them exactly chronological order, but I think it's a good order to it.
Would you like to show Denise's video?
Do you have the video there? I'd love you to. Private investigator, he actually calls himself a consultant, and he meets up with a young Russian immigrant who is living on the street, and he takes her in, and he makes her his ward, basically, and eventually winds up teaching her. And she kind of takes over some of the stories, and she, because of her background in Russia and her father in the Russian mafia, who she ran away from, she's got a tough upbringing, and she's got problems that go along with it, but she's also very resourceful, and she winds up being a boon to him way before the end of the book.
Are basically all of those short stories put into Hades Kiss, or there's still some that are not?
No, they're all Hades Kiss. They're all in Hades Kiss. The book here, nearly 500 pages.
Wow, nice.
So, as a debut novel, it's I was taking a big risk, but because it's a novel in stories, I figured it's easy for a person to pick it up and read a story, because all the stories are self-contained, and they're not obligated to get through all 500 pages. Although the hope is, of course, that once you read 2 or 3 stories, 4 stories, the person's going to want to continue to find out where these characters go and what happens to them. And,
right.
So I think I resolved it all pretty good by the end of the book. Can
you tell us, or is it a surprise, why you call it Hades Kiss for like the whole thing, or is that just the title of one of the?
Well, it's the title of the last story, and the last story is the most important. It's where all the elements come together, the characters, and the tie-in to the first story in the book, or actually it's the second story in the book. Hades Kiss is just each of my stories in the book. The title has a double meaning. It's soft and hard. It's dark and light. So the kiss, the Hades and the kiss, and the first story is a blues bouquet. It takes place in New Orleans, and so there's mention of blues music in there. He hangs out occasionally. He grabs a drink in his favorite bar, and it's a blues club. So, there's a lot of New Orleans stuff in there, a lot of Louisiana stuff. I mean, he spends one story where his plane goes down in the Atchafalaya swamp. So,
wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of what it is. Every story was built differently in my mind, at least going in. Because this first story I wrote, which is the second in the book, was the Holmes pastiche. I decided every story I'm not mimicking other writers. I'm not using their language, but the theme or the darkness of it is inspired by other writers who are my heroes. There's one story that I was influenced by Edgar Allan Poe. There's a story that was influenced by Du Maurier. There are almost every story in there. The final story in the book, Hades Kiss, in my mind, I had Bram Stoker, because Bram Stoker, the Dracula, was a series of letters and journal entries and news entries. And so my last story, Hades Kiss, there's a journal involved, and the journal is written by a woman who's taking care of a victim who had escaped a nasty person. And it's very dark, but that journal affects the female investigator, and because of her personal problems. And then this is what ties the book together. So that's why Hades Kiss becomes the most important story in the book.
Very cool. What can you describe your writing process?
Oh gosh. Well, on the short stories, I'm mostly a pantser. I have to know where I'm going, but I don't need to plot out a short story for the most part. Sometimes I get a story idea from just writing a paragraph, and then I focus in on the characters. And most of my writing is character focused. And so once I know my characters that well, I kind of know where I want to take them and how they'll react to any situation I put them in. And hopefully the next book coming up, the sequel to this book is going to be a full novel. And I decided I have to have a plot going into this one, just because novels, it's necessary to know where you're going, especially a mystery. You got to know the ending. You got to know how to get there. And you have to know the story beats along the way, the pinch points, as they say. And
where can people buy your novel?
What's that?
Where can people buy your novel?
Well, right now, my novel is available only on Amazon. You can buy the ebook or the paperback that I just showed you, the giant thing there. And hopefully soon, I plan on going wide with it and getting a distributor that can get me into more bookstores. But I wanted to start out on Amazon just because it was a place where I could almost give away my ebook and put my name out there and hopefully get people to pass around my name. Because right now everybody sees my name and they know me as an artist for 50 years or almost 50 years, and so they don't look for my name in the bookstores as a writer. So that's why I put G.J. Bingham. I use the pseudonym G.J. Bingham, my Gerald Joseph, because I didn't want people to buy this book thinking they're going to get pictures inside. Which would be, most of my fans would expect that. So that's why I went with G.J. Bingham on the novel. So,
have you spent much time in New Orleans?
No, I haven't actually. I've had several invites, and I have they're good friends who are from there or live there in that area, and I ask them things. But I've done so much research. YouTube is great for this. I discovered there are people who walk around the streets of New Orleans with a camera on a stick, and they're just walking down, and they walk the entire city. And so I feel when I'm writing, writing a place I don't know, I always have Google Maps open.
Me too.
I tell people that if a person is standing in a particular ward, New Orleans is broken up into wards. If you're standing in a particular ward and you feel the sun on your face and you're looking at the river, the Mississippi, you got to know whether you're looking east or west, because Mississippi is a snake down there by the Delta. If you look at the map, and so you got to know where you're standing and what's in front of you and what's behind you, and it's been an education. So I feel I know New Orleans pretty well by now, although I am planning a trip down there hopefully this year sometime.
Yeah, it's that stuff, and that is one of those things it's really cool to be able to be writing nowadays when you can actually look those things up or find out those details. I did a story where I dealt with the London Eye, but I wanted to have all these really like, how do you get, like, if you're not just getting on a normal ride, and like how do the repairs happen, how do all the other stuff, and like I would use like Google Earth to like zoom in and like look at where the ladders are and all the other stuff, and to be able to do that, it's kind of the research and writing can be very fun,
and it's so much easier now than it used to be.
Although you never know where it's going to take you when you start doing research. It's going to end up changing your story as you learn things.
Well, yeah, of course. It does. And I actually have several good friends who, if I need to know something, I was in the military and I knew guns. I've used weapons but this was many years ago. But I do have a very good friend who was an officer in the Navy SEALs, and his business was weaponry. And so I call him if I need, just to say, am I doing this right here? I'll look as many YouTube videos as I can, and then I'll ask and I'll say, does this read right? Is this possible? And then he'll get back to me and he'll give me a little advice, or she'll say, yeah, that's good. It works that way. So as long as you got people like that you can call on, and you combine that with your own research and online research and whatever you do, that makes writing easier and more fun.
Yeah, and I will say, especially because there are people like you mentioned who make their living doing these travel logs and stuff in different cities, where they will go and they're just on YouTube and they'll just film everything, and they'll give you all the information about all the food, all the different interesting places to see that are famous, and then all the ones that most people don't know about. They'll talk to local people. It's like, it's a wealth of information for you to be able to
Yeah, well,
learn.
and you know, and I chose certain things for certain reasons. I mean, my ex-wife is Russian. She was born there, and
Right.
she was raised in other countries in the Eastern Bloc, and it was the Eastern Bloc at the time. And so
Right.
I needed to just insert, you know, the occasional word or phrase or whatever, but because my secondary character is the Russian girl, and so I would text her real quick, says, "Is there a better word for this, or what? How would you say this word?" And you know, and so she was always there and always ready for me. So that's good.
You know, Jerry, that's funny because I was speaking with Bill Myerick last night, and he's married to a Russian woman as well.
Yeah, I haven't. I don't know if I've ever had an actual conversation with Val. Val's a talented guy. I like Val's work.
He's also concentrating on Western paintings.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, he's pretty good at what he's doing.
Yeah.
And does he actually have a horse or something? I think
he does have a horse. His name is Donnie.
Yeah, nice. I never had that opportunity, but yeah, I wish.
Well, I imagine you could now.
Yeah.
You know, where I live, I can walk to horse properties from my house. They're all over the city.
Yeah. I'm right now. I'm too busy for much else.
Right,
so
right.
Yeah, I can't. It's one of those things I don't have the time to take care of a horse the way it needs to be taken care of. So,
I know. Yeah. They need a lot of care.
Yeah. It was hard enough for me to take care of my cat in his last few years.
And Jeff, you've got a deaf, dumb, and blind old dog.
Yeah, we're at the very fun part of owning a pet. Where
this is my deaf, dumb, and blind old dog.
Oh, Larry. Poor guy. Yeah. Well, I watched your recent video there, and the dogs kind of took over for a second there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that happens a few times.
Yeah.
So, do you have an audio version of your book, or are you thinking about doing one?
Not yet. It's only been out since November, so I want to give it some time, see if I can get any traction anywhere, and before going to the expense of, I could do it myself, but somebody said you probably shouldn't.
Well, some authors do it themselves. Kevin J. Anderson often does the audio version of his own books.
Yeah.
Well,
my publicist friend told me that I should invest in somebody with a Louisiana accent, and because the book is all first person. So
what's funny is they're making a movie out of Chuck Dixon's Levon Cade, who's a good old boy from Alabama.
I've read all of them.
Yeah, and they've cast Jason Statham.
Yeah.
I like Jason Statham, but he never gets rid of a Brit accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he did one where it was a southern kind of thing where he didn't have a lot of dialogue in it. He's speaking short sentences and
Homefront. Yeah.
That was based on another novel, a great novelist who lives in Minneapolis who's never caught on. What's that guy's name? Oh well.
Yeah. I like that movie a lot, personally.
But you know what? With the kind of with the director he's got, and with Stallone backing him, and you got you put Jason Statham on the bill, that'll put butts on the theater seats. And I would be ecstatic. I don't care what his accent is.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Chuck Logan was the guy that wrote Homefront, and he's written a whole series of books about an ex-military guy, and I recommend them highly. Very good writer.
What's his name?
Chuck Logan.
Chuck Logan. Okay, I'll look for it.
Okay, I know you're super busy and everything, and you say you're focusing on the Western paintings as far as the paintings and stuff go. But would you paint any of the stuff from your Hades Kiss story?
No. I want to keep my writing life separate from my illustration.
Just separate.
Life. And I bought the rights to use the photo on my cover here from iStock, just because I didn't want to do anything that resembled a comic book cover or a painted character or something like that. So trying to, and I went to great expense hiring a professional editor and formatter and all that stuff, just because I wanted my book to fit in any bookstore, on any shelf in any bookstore. And so if it ever comes to that, so
Yeah.
it had to look professional to me. I've seen too many paperbacks out there by first time self-publishers, self-published books. And it's a lot of times you can tell they're self-published, and I didn't want to appear self-published, if anything else. So that was my original concern. So.
Yeah. Yep. And it's a good, I mean, that's image wise, I totally understand, because I was doing stuff before, and that's one reason why I went by started going by JS Earls. It's like, I want people to see me, you know, this way, because this is what I'm wanting to do. And also it just helps, you know, like you, like personally kind of make sure you focus that way, and you're like, okay, I need to see myself as this and not have imposter syndrome or whatever. It's like, no, I'm gonna do this. This is
well, like I said early in my career, you know, I had the stigma attached to, you know, Jerry's an artist. He can't be a writer too. So I faced that a few times, and even though my writing skills were just developing at the time, still I felt like I was doing better than some of what I was saying out there. But that's neither here nor there. It just now became the time for me to just shift into the final years of my life. You know, I'm not going to be around for another 50 years to be doing this. So I gotta write as much as I possibly can with the time I got left. I still feel healthy, and my faculties are almost all here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know Mike. I don't know how much Mike agrees. I would think he mostly does. But most sequential artists are pretty good storytellers. I mean, like if they're making a living at it, and they have to have some sort of a sense of storytelling, as opposed to just somebody who strictly does, you know, posters or pinups or whatever. It's like it's to be able to do sequential art is difficult, and you have to know what you're doing story-wise and how to communicate things.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think people have said, oh, my stories are very visual, and well, of course they would be.
Yeah.
But I do know the difference between sequential stories and the visual arts and the writing, because like I said, I've been writing all my life. Whether I was failing at it all my life is another story. But you know, Ray Bradbury, I don't know how many words did he say you have to write in a life before you can actually publish your first novel.
1,000,000 words.
There you go. So I'm a huge fan of Bradbury, and from childhood. And so, yeah, that's I kind of feel the same way. It took me a long time to get here, and a lot of failures around there. I tell people I probably got a dozen completed novels on my hard drive. Very few of them I would even send to anybody to look at. So, and right now I look at stuff I was writing 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I say I can't release this anywhere.
Yeah.
I know a little bit more what I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Mike did personally tell me that he was very impressed by your writing.
Well, he told me that too, and coming from Mike, that's huge. I thank him to this day. He's, that's why I sent him the book. I wanted his opinion, and when he's telling me how much he liked it, it was just, I like hearing that stuff. And I've heard that from other writers. I sent the book to writer friends of mine, and just I'm floored by it, because I've been working in isolation for 3 years on this thing, and you never know how it's going to be received. I don't care how much work you put into it and how the struggle goes and how successful you think you are. You never know how successful you're going to be until you start getting that feedback. And so, I appreciate all these things.
For anybody watching who likes, who doesn't, I actually really like the idea of collecting a bunch of short stories together, not just because I write some, but also because, especially when they're connected like that, because it does make it more, I don't know, it makes it more palatable or more realistic for regular readers to get into.
I found there's a lot of reasons to do that, because it's easier, especially on a large book like this. Like I said, it's easier for someone to pick up and read one story or two stories or half a dozen and get sucked into the rest of the book. It's a book this size. I look at Ken Follett's books, and they're all like, they're 600, 700 pages, and I just don't want to get involved in it. I don't care how good of a writer he is. I got too much to read. So
I'm still working on Michener's Centennial. I've been at it for 5 years.
Exactly. My mother left me all her Michener books. She read all of them. And I look at them every once in a while, and I'm tempted to pick one up, but it's like, I've got this stack of books that I need to get through first.
Does it include Mexico?
I don't know if I've got Mexico.
I recommend that because it's
I got
funny.
Hawaii. I have Hawaii. I have
Hawaii.
Yeah.
But Mexico stands out because it's got a sense of humor, and most of his books don't.
Yeah.
But it's a huge epic that starts in the Mesozoic era and works its way forward, like all of his books. But I recommend it.
Yeah, I like a sense of humor. It's one of the reasons I like Delmore Leonard so much, because he took Hemingway's style of writing and actually gave some humor to it. Hemingway had very little humor in his writing.
That's true.
Yeah.
Have you read James Ellroy?
James Ellroy, yes. I have. I read L.A.
I mean, he makes Hemingway look wordy.
Yeah, well. Yeah, well, he looks pretty wordy himself. He gets more wordy as time goes on.
Well, I think he's written himself out of the game, although the machine gun style of his prose remains.
Yeah.
The plots are so labyrinthine that they're almost impossible to decipher.
Yeah, one of the reasons I'm not drawn to him too much is because I like to have a protagonist I can zero in on, and a lot of times you don't know who his protagonist is, and you don't know who to root for, and it was kind of like what LA Confidential.
It's true. It's a shame because his middle stuff is great, including in LA Confidential and The Big Nowhere.
Yeah. How about gosh, names keep flipping in and out of my brain here at the moment, so I'll I'll let you direct that. I go from one writer to the next so often. The only writers I read consistently are my friends like you and Chuck Dixon and a few others.
We appreciate that, Jerry.
Well, it's something I got to do. And I would hope my friends read mine too. And I thank you for taking the time with my book here. So,
well, with any luck, we're going to hook you up.
Yeah.
I don't do drugs. Hook me up. I don't know what hook me up means, but okay. Thank you.
With a publisher.
Oh, wow. That would be nice. Yes. Wow.
In fact, I have already taken action while we're doing this here. I sent that Denise's video to Wolfpack. We'll see what they say.
Okay. I did send something to Wolfpack a while ago. Chuck Dixon gave me an in there, but the guy he sent me to basically sent it to his readers who were wherever, and I just got a form letter back. So we'll see what happens. I'm open to suggestions.
Was it Hades Kiss? Was it Hades Kiss?
No, it wasn't. No.
All right.
Hades Kiss is it's something. Well, I did get a lot of rejections on Hades Kiss, but just as short stories. And then when I put the book out, all of a sudden everybody's, I get a lot of people who would not have picked up the short stories. And I found out, and make a mental note for yourselves if you are interested in trying to get into these big mystery magazines of any kind. Check out the editors on those magazines, because most of them and their requirements for submission. And requirements like, nobody can kick a dog. It's like everything is everything is very PC, and everything is very easygoing. And they're looking for armchair mysteries more than they are, hard boiled or
they're called cozies.
Cozies, yeah. And so they much prefer that, I guess, because of their audience, but they have to be reader friendly. And my book is dark. I have a disclaimer in the front of my book saying, the individual investigator, private detective was first written by Edgar Allan Poe, and his one of his first stories with his protagonist finds women dismembered in an apartment. Now, I don't do that specifically in any of my books, but my stories do have a dark bent. And Hades Kiss and I actually put the subtitle on top, A Study in Darkness, basically playing off of Conan Doyle's A Study in Scarlet, but to tell people what this book is as they pick it up. So it's murder mysteries.
Is there a specific reason why you like to do that, to have the darkness?
It's just my initial background. I read Poe when I was in high school, and Conan Doyle. There's some dark stuff in the Conan Doyle when describing the crime scenes, and throughout the history of the detective genre, I always had a problem with Jessica Fletcher riding her bicycle with a big smile on her face after all the murders she's walked in on in her life, in her town, and yet she, there's always the happy music in the background as she pedals her bicycle through the rose garden, and that always bothered me. And I, having known police, having been a cop and seen a body, and it's not something if you see enough of them, it's going to affect your psyche. It's going to affect your way of looking at the world. And I've heard this from other police as well, that you use the graveyard humor. My father was a Chicago fireman, and they used the graveyard humor on their job because it's the way they dealt with the everyday. There was a train. I was a kid. My father at the dinner table describing this train wreck that they went to. Well, a train ran over a person basically, and one of the firemen had to walk up the tracks, and then he's coming back with a bag in his hand singing, "I ain't got no body." And so my father tells me this stuff, tells us this stuff around the dinner table at night after he's had whatever he's done on the job there. Chicago fireman, he saw a lot of crap. And, but it's the way it's a coping mechanism. And so I don't see while they joke and laugh inside, I don't think a lot of them are smiling all the time. And I kind of deal with that. I kind of deal with the psychology in this book too, of the trauma, whether it's the detective or whether it's his sidekick there who comes from a tough background. So, I think that makes my story stand out a bit from the likes of Ellery Queen, for instance. I love the Ellery Queen mysteries. I mean, the guy was brilliant. I forget his actual name, sorry, but I was always bothered by the fact that he didn't play much with his character. It was always the same character, book after book. He was a great detective, but I could never get into the character, the detective's mind. And because it was like, it's all about the facts, man. He was Adam 12, or not Adam 12. He was Dragnet there. So his delivery was sometimes. So, like I said, great stories, but I was always looking for something more. I wanted to get into the minds of my characters.
Well, how long did it take you, or did you already kind of have it in your head to like get into like your lead character in this, to like really know his personality and start hearing him talk to you?
He changed, obviously they would, but he changed over time. The first story was my Holmes pastiche, and I was writing him as the machine. It was he had the villain figured out from the start, and he set up the whole story in order to take the villain down. Then I brought in the side character, as Arthur Conan Doyle created the Watson character because he realized Holmes was a machine, and he wanted his audience to have the heart as well. And he created Watson as the heart of the story. And he gave Watson the first person position to describe Holmes and this machine he lived with. But Watson became the heart of the story, the voice of the conscience for Holmes. And so that's kind of why I brought in the other character. And I didn't want to make the side character appear as Watson, but that's why I made her a young female, streetwise character I'm sorry.
I had to sneeze.
Oh, that's okay. I thought you were falling out of your chair. I was going to say, you need
No,
help.
no.
Okay.
I didn't know if I could mute the mic in time.
No, okay. That's all right. I didn't hear it. That's fine. Anyhow, but that's why I created the secondary character. And then the secondary character started taking over a lot of the stories because I was more interested in her because she was the heart of my book.
Right.
Even over time, because of my lead is Nicholas Vigel is my lead detective character. And he's, independent. He calls himself a consultant, and he takes this young woman in, and he winds up changing because of he starts seeing things through her eyes, and he starts caring for her. It starts adjusting the way he thinks story to story, and his reactions change throughout the course of the book until the final book. Even though, I'm not going to go into any specifics, but that's why the dual character. And although, like I said, I do start getting into Vigel's mind more as the book progresses, simply by virtue of the fact his proximity to his associate Alia. So,
right. Are there specific places you would like people to follow you on online?
Anybody can find me on Facebook, GJ Bingham, and then my professional Facebook page is gjbingham.writer. Or you go to my website and access all that stuff. It's gjbingham.com.
And I didn't know if you wanted to say anything. I'm sure it'll come up in some of your other feeds or whatever. But
it's gonna be a fight.
I was gonna say about the you said you had some art shows that were going to be coming up too. I didn't know if you wanted to say where those were. If anybody sees this, it's near those that would want to go.
Okay, well, the second week of February, there's Settlers West is one of the biggest name Western art galleries in the country. And I started my gallery career there, and they've been very good to me. Even though I'm not in their main shows, they invite me back every year to submit for their miniature shows. And this is one of the largest miniature shows in the country. Wow. Some 300 paintings and 150 artists. And so they invite me back every year. And so that's, believe the second week in February on a Saturday, where they have a draw auction. You put your name in a cup for a particular painting, and your name gets pulled, and you have the option of buying that painting. So some of the best Western artists in the country in there. And I'm honored to be invited in every year. Yeah. It's called Settlers West Gallery. You can see the whole gallery show. It's online right now. settlerswest.com, maybe. I forget.
Groovy, baby.
Yeah. So there you go. It's my busy life, such as it is. My ex says, "You're retired, right?" Yeah, sure. I've worked harder these past 3 years than I have almost my entire life.
Yeah, that's when you have more time to be busy.
Yeah. Well, I never thought how much work it would take to figure out the whole self-publishing thing and formatting a book and everything that I really never wanted to, and now marketing, everything I never really wanted to know about. I just wanted to write my silly stories, and no, I got to actually promote. It's hard. It's tough for me. I was never a good self-promoter. Even my art, I always figured my art will sell itself. And so I was, it worked against me sometimes, but I never worried over it too much. But now to get my name out there as a writer, I've actually got to tell people about it, right?
Yeah.
And I appreciate the invitation here for that very purpose. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I know I've met, even though I'm not using them personally because I'm very much into doing what I'm wanting to do right now. But there are a lot of really good independent publishers now that are actually, really, really cool that I have met some of the authors, and they're like, they send me, all these copies of my books, and so I can go to these things and do stuff. And that's a big deal to get all that stuff printed and be able to have it with you.
Yeah.
But
fortunately, I hired the editor I hired. She's also a writer, but she actually has her own little publishing company now. And she didn't publish my book, but she helped me format, and she was very helpful along the way.
Yeah. Well, very cool. I guess we will let you go unless is there anything else you wanted to say, or any dead bodies you want to confess?
No, nothing else I want to say. Just another push. Yeah, anybody who can
Yeah.